What's going on, everybody? Sam Shapiro back here with more of your Heat latest on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel for great daily content, all pertaining to your Miami Heat right here Monday through Friday. Is there a hypothetical where Miami could potentially land Trae Young in a trade deal for Tyler Herro? I think that's a bit of a hot take right now, but I definitely thought it was one worth throwing out here on the channel. I think if Tyler Herro can't necessarily resurge himself back to the all-star type of player he at least was last season, or at least can't really maintain his health in the grand scheme of things. I mean, the guy hasn't played a full regular season in the 305 since the start of his career, and I think at this point in time, if Miami is confident that that's not going to be the case, they wouldn't necessarily weigh some sort of deal involving Herro to acquire the superstar point guard in Trae Young coming to the 305, at least at this point in time. And I think it would also give Miami a superstar to really build their team around that they kind of really need at this point. Although I would, in a perfect world, I'd really love to see Herro and Young both be on the Miami Heat at the same time. I think that it would potentially acquire, giving up Tyler Herro to acquire a superstar guard like Trae Young, at least at this point in time. And I think if things don't necessarily pan out the way that Miami is hoping that they do, in the sense that Herro's able to come back completely healthy, play out the rest of the regular season, and pick up where he left off last year being an all-star, I think it's definitely not the worst idea in the world to potentially look at a trade deadline type of deal to bring Trae Young to Miami. Now, would Atlanta be in favor of that? I don't think necessarily. However, if they decided that, if their regular season's not really going so well and they feel like it's time to tear it all down and they're going for a rebuild, they could get some decent assets out of Miami in trading for Herro, and maybe some picks as well coming up in the draft and later in coming years down the line, and maybe some role players that Miami wouldn't be so confident in potentially developing. But I definitely think that this is an interesting hot take, that if Tyler Herro doesn't really resurge himself back to the play that he necessarily lived up to, at least in the 305, that Atlanta wouldn't be so against if they decided to potentially rebuild, shipping their superstar to Miami, giving Miami a superstar type of player to really build their team around. Because at least in the front court, if Ware kind of reaches that ceiling and Bam continues to play at the level he's playing at, Miami's got a pretty solid big three, arguably Young being better in that system than Tyler Herro. But again, only time would kind of tell, and I think it would take a trade deadline kind of situation where Miami would be desperate to kind of get rid of Herro, in the sense that they don't necessarily believe in his ability anymore. But again, I think that's a bit of a hot take, and I don't know necessarily if Miami would want to bite on that, even if Herro wasn't necessarily living up to the potential hype that he had picked up from, this past season where he was named an all-star for the first time in his career. So drop in the comments if you think there's ever a scenario that Herro for Trae Young coming to Miami, if that could ever happen, if that deal would potentially be in interest to Miami, and if it would really bolster Miami's roster in the grand scheme of things. Because I think if Miami were to make it happen, especially if it was just a one-for-one player swap, it could potentially do a lot for Miami in the future. But that's a big what if, and I also think that, again, the only pro to that would be maybe bringing a superstar type of player Miami would want to have in terms of their backcourt, another cornerstone to really build around. I think Trae Young potentially offensively could boost the team a little bit more than Tyler Herro without really sacrificing much on defense, just because I think in the grand scheme of things defensively, both players are pretty on par with one another, not necessarily being better than the other defensively at this point in time. But it's definitely an interesting hot take that I kind of was thinking about, with Atlanta potentially, I feel like, not really seeing, if they decided that they didn't really see a future in Trae Young, and then if, like I said before, if Herro wasn't really able to develop into the type of player coming back off that ankle injury that Miami would kind of hope he was going to come back and be, that it could potentially be an interesting deal for both teams. But now moving over to two players that Miami has made it very clear that they're at least going to invest a lot of their future in, especially Miami deciding to pick up the rookie scale team options for both Kel'el Ware and Jaime Jaquez Jr. Now, the details of these options: Miami exercised the third-year option for the 2026-27 season for Kel'el Ware, guaranteeing his contract for that year. And then Jaime Jaquez Jr., the team exercising the fourth-year option for Jaquez Jr. for the 2026-27 season. And this really secures them really as two major pieces as a future in a future core regarding their front court. And I just think that it really speaks volumes to Miami really expressing that they want to, invest in them being a part of Miami's front court. I think especially it shows that they have high hopes in terms of what these players are going to develop in the sense Kel'el Ware potentially reaching all-star status in the coming seasons, but then also Jaime Jaquez, who hasn't really played up to the expectations of not just the organization, but many fans as well. And I think that this is Miami's statement kind of saying, we believe that these are going to be players that are really going to contribute to not just the success of this team, but the strength and foundation of Miami's front court, and could really do some damage, especially for Miami in the coming years. So again, this move really kind of just speaks volumes because they didn't really have to announce that they were going to pick up these options until October 31st. So this action was kind of obviously, like I just said before, expected, but it kind of speaks volumes that they're doing it more than a month out in terms of, really wanting to make a statement and saying these are guys that we not just see as the future of our front court, but also kind of see as the future of our team, really, at least going into not just this next season, but the season afterward as well. And I'm, again, very hopeful that Jaquez Jr. is going to kind of improve on his play over the course of this upcoming season, especially with the development of some of the younger guys I've been talking about over this upcoming week, but also with Kel'el Ware especially, hopefully reaching that all-star level status, if not this season, definitely next season as well. And again, this move from Miami kind of just solidifies that they have faith that that is going to happen. At least these two respective scenarios that I just explained is going to happen for both players in the next, hopefully, 2 years. And now moving over to another hot topic regarding Miami's roster, Terry Rozier. Obviously, Miami making it pretty clear that they're pretty over and done with him at this point, kind of making it seem like they would waive him and pretty much be okay with the dead money in terms of the $24 million they still owe him. And I talked about potentially if Miami doesn't decide that they want to at least see how things play out with Rozier, now the urgency of signing a veteran point guard like Russell Westbrook more than ever. But if the scenario in this case only presented it being swap Rozier out to bring Westbrook in, would that ultimately be worth it? And I honestly think yes. I think that Westbrook, during his time, especially with the Denver Nuggets most recently, had kind of proved that bringing in a veteran guard could definitely bolster Miami's roster in the grand scheme of things. Rozier also kind of being a veteran guard as well. But that experiment ultimately didn't really pan out that well. His play digressing to a kind of alarmingly noticeable progression really over the time that he was in Miami. It kind of seemed like when Jimmy Butler was still on the team, he wanted a Damian Lillard and he got a Terry Rozier. And unfortunately, Rozier didn't kind of match the play that he was bolstering for the Charlotte Hornets or the Boston Celtics, and kind of really digressed to a lower kind of level of play, at least coming to Miami. So at this point in time, if Miami is very set in stone on waiving Rozier and getting him out, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring a guy like Westbrook in, because I don't really see a scenario where Westbrook's going to come in and potentially be a worse option for Miami, maybe in some scenarios because of his lack of chemistry with the current roster, versus Rozier has kind of played some games with this guy, with the current roster and some of these guys already, so kind of has a feel for their tendencies in terms of where on the court they're going to be. But I think right now it definitely makes some sort of sense if they're content on getting Rozier out, if it was at the expense of bringing Westbrook in, if they could find some sort of deal to potentially get Westbrook to come on board for a veteran minimum type of contract. I mean, Westbrook's still a free agent, and I think that him being able to play with Miami would kind of give him an opportunity to be with a program that would allow him to kind of almost win now, so to speak. And he would definitely contribute to helping Miami put more games in the win column, especially with Tyler Herro out. And if he was going to be taking over if he was going to be taking over the responsibilities of Terry Rozier, I think could really, really help bolster this roster in the grand scheme of things as well. And now moving over to some more news regarding the Miami Heat family. The Miami Heat community is mourning the recent loss of Miami Heat security member Kenneth Lewis. The team security member passed away pretty recently, and he had served in the United States Air Force for nearly 26 years, achieving the rank of Chief Master Sergeant. He received 20 service medals for his military service, and he was also a coach at a gym where he was remembered for his bright smile and easy laugh. So very disheartening, obviously, to see that. We send our condolences to the family, and we want to thank him for his service, and not just for what he did in terms of protecting the players and the organization, but as well as what he had done for his service to our country and the United States Air Force. Again, just very, very disheartening and sad news to see. And our condolences are with the family as well regarding a staple to safety with the Miami Heat organization. But that's going to do it for today's episode of your Heat Latest here on FanArc. Don't forget to drop a like on this video, and of course subscribe to our channel for great daily content, all pertaining to your Miami Heat right here Monday through Friday. Thanks so much for joining us on this Wednesday. I'm Sam Shapiro. Have a great day.